Hi everyone and welcome to Linked Business, and today I'm chatting with Catherine Nicholas. I was really pleased to have Catherine come along to the Guildford Hub a week or so ago, and she came along and did a talk about disc profiling, and I'd put myself forward as the guinea pig. So we'd already had a debrief of my disc profile, which was really interesting. It's really quite enlightening. It's well worth doing. Well worth doing. And after the hub, I said to Catherine, it really must get you in front of more people. So I thought, well, let's do a LinkedIn Live. So here we are today. So welcome, Catherine. Thank you for coming along. And
Thank
thank you
you.
twice in 2 weeks. Brilliant.
I know, aren't you lucky? So thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I really enjoyed working with you, working with the group, and doing your disc profile. So it was really good fun. So thank you very much for the invitation, and thank you for this too. So
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Do you want to start by giving us a little bit of your background before we actually get into disc and tell us what disc is all about? Yeah.
yeah, so I'm a transformational life coach. I'm based in Woking. I do online face-to-face group work. So my background is in corporate. I used to work for some quite large organisations, and I discovered about 5 years ago. I discovered coaching, and I realised how much I loved it. I think I'd always been a coach at heart, but it had. I realised that it was actually a thing. So yeah, I was working with quite a lot of corporate people, so execs or teams, people who were looking to change jobs in their career. So most of it was around, a lot of the work I did was around how do I transition out of my current career into something else. So I did a lot of those kinds of conversations. And then about a year ago, I decided that I would like to do it for myself. So I have been a full-time coach since last year. And now I'm beginning to kind of grow in the local community and in the local business community, and been coaching small groups, some businesses to help them grow their small businesses, which has been amazing. It's been an amazing experience. So yeah, thank you, and I've loved it, and I've got to meet wonderful people like you. So yeah.
Oh, that's really good. It's always good to find out people's backstory and how they got into what they're doing. And yeah, certainly that passion for coaching and what you do certainly came through in both in the review of my disc profile and also in the session that we ran for the hub, or you ran for the hub for me a week or so ago. So what is this disc thing all about? I mean,
So
I obviously know now, but some of the people watching this may not have a clue. So tell us a little bit about what disc is all about.
so this disc thing is it's basically a psychometric tool. It's been used. The methodology has been used on lots of different types of tools. So it looks at personality styles. So whether you're very dominant or whether you're very analytical, and there's lots of different tools out there on the market. So for example, Myers-Briggs, Insights, MBTI. I think you talked about Belbin. They're all kind of based around the same methodology and use the same kind of theory. It's all based on your behavioral preferences. So basically, how do you like to behave in specific situations? So if you're in your home life, you might behave differently to how you are in your in your business or in your work life. So when you run the assessment, you pick a situation, and then you answer the questions based on that, and then it gives you a profile based on the situation that you selected. It's very impartial. It's completely non-judgmental. It's based on lots and lots of history. This has been running for many, 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 many years. And the DISC tool, and as a lot of them do, the DISC tool identifies your dominant style. So you'll always be a blend of all of the styles of personality, and we'll talk about those in a little bit. But there's usually one, often two, sometimes three dominant that come out of the profile. And then what it then does, the actual tool gives you a description of what are the 40 different styles. So there are 40 different styles, all on a kind of plotted on a circle. And the different combinations are all plotted out. And then it effectively says you are a particular description. What the tool does is it gives you an awful lot of insight about who you are, about potentially how you show up in given situations. And that can then help you to open up way more effective communication for how you share what's important to you, but also how you then identify some of those behavioral traits in other people. And that's been really powerful. And it's really, really helpful to start a conversation when you're in a kind of a challenging situation. So, for example, if someone is very dominant and you're actually very analytical, it can help you navigate some of that conversation, because actually you'll understand that you like the detail, but someone else doesn't. What DISC isn't, and that's probably quite important to know, it doesn't take into account what your history is. It doesn't look at your emotional intelligence. It doesn't take into account any of your values or your strengths. It just purely, based on the answers that you give it, it plots it on a circle, and then provides you some insight around that particular personality style. So it doesn't always need to be right. It's only kind of one of a much greater level of who you are. It's just a kind of slither of that, and all of the combination of all the things that you have in your life and the way that you've been brought up and how you live your life and your values, that's who make you you. The DISC analysis doesn't. It doesn't define who you are.
Yeah. So it's really just a piece of information in the jigsaw of communications. It's not the definitive piece. It's just the tool to help you and give you some guidance, in understanding yourself, and then possibly understanding the traits that you might identify in others as well, and understanding what's driving that.
Yeah, and it's a really good, if it's a really good way of starting a conversation about who you are and what you like and what you dislike. So if it's something that you're not used to doing, it's actually quite a nice introduction to thinking about, well, how do I show up when I'm in a particular given situation at work, for example, and I want to get a bit more self-awareness about that. It can help you start having that conversation with yourself, or with, if you do it as a facilitated conversation with a coach, for example, it's really helpful. So yes.
And I think as we found when we did my DISC profile, it is situational. Because if you put yourself in the situation where I'm in work, I'm going to answer these questions from a work perspective, it can give you a slightly different view to if you put it into a personal situation and say, I'm going to answer this from the home life situation, or that's really quite interesting.
Yeah, but that's really interesting, because then what you can then start to explore is how those two different sides of your life play out, and then you can then think about how, if you wanted to, is it something you want to blend? Do you want to keep them quite separate? How much hard work is it for you? Is it quite emotionally draining to keep two quite different sides of you if you have a very different profile in public to the one that you have when you're in your home life? So it's just a really interesting way of opening your eyes and understanding that actually the way that we show up in different situations is different. We wear different hats all the time. We've all got a different hat. Even the meeting the person on the checkout versus being with your loved ones. It's very different. So it's a really interesting tool. And again, very situational. So completely all about your behavior and the situation that you're in.
Yeah. Brilliant. So let's dig a little deeper, shall we?
Okay, so I'm going to move forward a little bit. So I've got a couple of slides here just to try and explain a little bit. So for people that like pictures, not just words, because I quite like pictures too. So what does this do? So it's there to help you understand yourself. So once you can understand yourself better, it can then help you to understand other people. So in the report that you get, it gives you a really detailed kind of explanations around how you might be showing up in terms of how you behave. What it can also do, it can also then share that it then helps you understand that there are different personality styles to yourself, and that actually it can help you understand them too, particularly in relation to how you show up with those individuals. When you understand both yourself and how others work, because of the way that their dominant styles may work, then you can then learn to adapt your own style, so that you can then have conversations that are more efficient, and easier to navigate. And then you can then modify your preference to then effectively suit other people. So if you're in a sales situation, for example, and you are someone that really likes the detail, but you've got someone that comes to you and you recognize that there's someone that doesn't like the detail, you can modify how you share the information about what you're selling to that individual to help them see the key points in the data, rather than all of the information that you might like to give them. So it helps you just navigate that conversation in a way that the other person can accept and adapt the information to themselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does. Yeah. Certainly, sales is a very good example where people's people's styles come through very strongly, particularly in hard-nosed salespeople. Very high, what I always refer to as very high D, and I'm sure I'll explain all about that in a minute. But and you know, they just want to get the sale and bang, 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 bang. They're really driven, as the D indicates, and it can be a bit overwhelming to you. But if you need certain things, you've got to learn to actually get them to stop, say, okay, I understand where you're coming from, but this is my need. If you want to make a sale to me, this is what I need from you. And then they'll actually pull back a bit and think, oh, okay, I can get a sale if I do this. They'll do it because they can see that they'll get a sale if they do it.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that you've got those traits within yourself to be able to say, actually, I don't, I want to go bang, 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 bang and sell really hard. But actually, there will be individuals out there who don't want to. They want to have a think about things. They want to check the T's and C's, for example, or that actually, they just want someone else to help them make the decision. There'll be others out there that don't want to make the decision, and they kind of like, yeah, oh, that sounds great. I'll do that. But it's about understanding how you can modify how you receive information, and then also how you share it. So and being able to recognize that around people is really important. So and it's very effective. So any other questions on that one, Alan?
No, not from me on that one.
Okay, so basically the DISC model. So the way that the DISC model works is it's done on two different axes. So it looks at how outgoing people are and how reserved people are, and people will go up and down this scale. Some people in some situations will be very reserved, others they'll be very outgoing. So just remember that this is situational. So the tool looks at how outgoing you are, and then plots you on a scale to how reserved you are. What it then does is it then looks at how task orientated, can't say the word this afternoon.
Easy enough to type, much more difficult.
Yeah, I could do it, but yeah. So it looks at how much you like to do task-related stuff, the doing thing, versus how much you like to be with people, or how much or how focused you are on people. And then if you're kind of up here in the top left, for example, if you're very outgoing and very task orientated, your preference will be a D. We'll talk about that in a second. If you're in the bottom right, you're very people focused, but you're quite reserved, you're a bit more introverted. And those different traits are plotted effectively along these two scales, and then your score effectively gets put somewhere on a grid in there. So the model itself then, so we've got these two tasks, and what we then have is overlaid across the top of that is the fourth dominant preference, or the four personality preferences. So the first one is dominant, stands for D. The second one, so they're people who are quite, they tend to be very leadership led. They're very, they know what they want. They're very decisive. And they'll often want very little detail. So if that's your dominant preference, then you can often be called very red or D. The influence is the I, or yellow, as this model denounces. So it's people who are quite flamboyant in this. They're very creative. They see the world quite often quite differently, and often these people they're often in sales because they're quite creative about that stuff. On the bottom right, we've got very people focused, but slightly more introverted, a bit more reserved. And these people are the steadies. And this is where the general bulk of the population. So most people actually often have a preference in the S quadrant. And then on the bottom left, we've got compliance. So this is people who are very task orientated, quite reserved, usually quite analytical, methodical people. And they are basically looking they want all the details. So quite often, if you've got a D and a C, sorry, who are in a sales situation, you've got the D that's trying to make the sale, and the C is going, well, I'll take all the information home and I'll have a read of it and I'll come back to you. They want to see that detail. So I've got some words here. So yeah, so some of the words around here, I put them all under the D. So direct, decisive, doer, determined. People on the top right, inspirational, could be very influential. They're very interested in people. They're quite impulsive. They're very informal. They're quite flamboyant quite often. This is when they're very pure, I and S's and D's, obviously. And we have a blend of all of this. So I know my characteristics, I sit down here very heavily in the bottom right in the S area. So quite supportive, sensitive, stable. Coaches sit here. Doctors quite often sit here. They like the status quo, don't like things to change too much. And then on the bottom left, we've got cautious. They like things to be correct. They like to be compliant. They like to follow the rules. Very careful, quite calculating in terms of, have I dotted the I's and crossed the T's? So those are the styles. And then if you think you can probably relate to a lot of these, I would say most people will go, yeah, I'm actually quite outgoing and I do like doing the stuff, and they'll know if they're a natural leader. These are often our natural leaders. And at the same time, we'll have the more sensitive people on the bottom right here they know that they like to be around people. They're quite quiet. And you can change. I know that I've run this profile a couple of times over my career, and I was quite heavily a C and an S, and I've actually shifted up towards the I. So I think this role in the last 18 months has really helped me dial up my I, and I quite enjoy it now, actually. so
it's
yeah.
Interesting. A question for you.
Mm.
The way the diagram is laid out, there's obviously a lot of correlation between people in adjacent quadrants. What about opposite quadrants? Does that ever happen? Do you ever have a D and an S, or a C and an I?
You can. I mean, you'll obviously have. You'll probably find that you'll have very high of a D, but then there'll be some very low S scoring in there. So they tend to be opposites. Right. There are some unusual characters that will do. Those will probably sit as an outlier, if I'm honest. Yeah. But in general, most people tend, and this is where you get these clashes. So you get the very kind of highly flamboyant, creative people, and then you get someone who's a real conscientious, wants all the detail, and these two often clash, and they really frustrate each other because they can't. The C's can't understand why the I just doesn't want to make a decision or doesn't want the detail, and the I is like, why do you keep giving me all of this information? You know I'm never going to read it. So there's those kinds of behaviours, and likewise the D's and the S's, but they work really complementary to each other. So if you're in a team or if you're working with a number of different people, actually you need all of these when you're working in a group. So you need the people that are going to lead you, but you need those others that are actually going to make sure that the team are very, are quite motivated, and these people will keep the team supported, and they'll look after them. The I's will be doing the creation of the ideas, and then you'll get the C's that are actually the ones that are kind of, that number doesn't add up. You can't do that. You need to be a bit more realistic about it. So you get clashes, but they also are really, really complementary. And that's where the benefit comes when you're working with others, because actually when you recognize that that you need all of that as a group, then your team can become incredibly powerful, because you then distribute the roles according to that, and the strengths according to that. And then that's where your team will then fly.
Yeah. So if you have a team, getting everybody to take the DISC profile and then discussing it openly and honestly, obviously focused around being in a work situation rather than a home situation.
Yeah.
But it enables you to identify those gaps in the personalities that you have within the team.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't use DISC, but I in the hub session I referred to how we used to use Belbin on our project management programs, and that had sort of 10 different types of people, and one of them was a completer finisher. The completer finisher is the person that dots the I's, crosses the T's, gets all the detail done. And if you don't have one of those in your team, you've got to actually recognize that and put in place some processes to make sure the I's get dotted and the T's get crossed. Otherwise, you miss things out. Likewise, if you're missing an ideas person, you've got to try and think of some ways of perhaps bringing somebody in temporarily into the team to spark ideas, or using brainstorming and stuff like that. And again, they're all different parts of the mix and putting together that ideal team that you can use to really understand and help your business run much more effectively.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and actually show and using, even if you're a sole trader, you know, if you're working for yourself and there's no one else, actually knowing where you sit on this scale and then bringing people in to help you do these things is really powerful. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not an accountant, and I could do my own books, but actually I want someone that is going to be in the C quadrant to do my books for me, because actually they're the expert. They're going to make sure that I'm compliant to what I need to be compliant to. Likewise, you know, networking is a great way of generating ideas, and getting leadership ideas from people. So mixing with the other types of individuals who are not your strength or who are not your dominant is really powerful, because you can then take that idea and run with that for yourself. So you can really start to utilize the power of the people around you by understanding how their dominant styles play out as well.
Yeah. I think the important thing is to keep an open mind about what you get out of this, and think about how you can use it. So be curious about how it could work for you, or how it might work for you, rather than being judgmental. Oh, I don't like this stuff. It's all a bit woo-woo for me, but I'm not going to do it. Yeah, that's judgmental. If you think, oh, actually, maybe I should try it and give it a go and have a look see how I might be able to learn something from it.
Absolutely. And being that open and curious to actually that, you know, I'm not always right. There are other opportunities that I could use by doing this work, is really, really good. And actually, how does this help you grow your business? Because you know, I'm an entrepreneur of my own right, and actually, how does this help me grow? You know, what I need to do. Do I outsource some of it? Where do I get my ideas from? How do I make sure that I'm compliant? And and actually then going, actually, how can I, learning from others, to actually dial up some of those other behaviors is really powerful as well. And then you can then see, oh, actually, I quite like doing this. Having an experiment. I love experiments. You know, I talk about experiments all the time when I'm coaching. Have an experiment of, you know, well, what would it be like to be a D for a day or a C for a day? And then, and actually, well, what do I like about this or not? And those kinds of things. That's really powerful too.
Yeah. It's all about finding your flow and being in that flow, because that's when you're going to be best in your business. And the things that don't work for you when you're or when you're in that flow, or that take you out of your flow, they're the things to try and offload. So that could be in the C, or it could be in the D sort of area if you're not in those spaces.
So I love this tool, because it's a great conversation, like opener, particularly for people who might be new to coaching or new to personal development type stuff. It's a start. It's just one place to try something that's a bit different, and to challenge yourself actually, and go, oh no, that's not quite right, but these bits are right about it. And actually, how do I do more of that? Because actually, I know that that's holding me back, for example. So in the report, there are, I think there's a slide in here. So yeah, there are, in the report, you get a 15-page report. So I'll just move down these. So you get a high-level description of each of the DISC styles. You get the assessment, measurement of your own intensity. So it gives you your dominant style. It tells you how your personality style might show up in different areas. So things around challenges, fears, how you might like to work. So how do you work with other people? And then how do you share that? It gives an intensity score for each style so that you can then describe how you show up in everyday life. It talks about how you can communicate with others, how you can improve your communication with others by telling them what you need, and then understanding what they need.
Yeah.
There's some indication of strengths actually as well. So there is a bit of strength analysis in here based on the scores in each of those, in each of the graphs. And then you then get this intensity score, which is plotted on a graph, so you can see how they relate to each other one. So, and it also shows how your style shows up in response to how are you in public versus how do you see yourself, which is quite a powerful thing. And then what it also then does is it gives you some, well, what do you want to work on next? Because actually, unless you do something with what you've learned, then actually how are you going to move forward? So action should always proceed the learning, so that you are then taking action on what you've learned about yourself or about how other people work. So yeah. So I think that's it. Yeah, this is mine actually. This is how your graphs look differently. So this is an intensity score. So you can see here on the left side that actually they're all quite similar. So I've got a I'm very high green, as you can see, and in private, and my perceived self, my yellow is quite high, and it's kind of on the borderline here. But they're in principle they're the same. So yeah, this is my score, and it shows up. It feels right. I feel comfortable in my skin doing this. So yeah.
Yeah, I remember my graphs were slightly different.
You know, that's a story for another day.
Yes, if you want that story, you need to be a member of the hub and come along to one of these sessions.
Absolutely. Cool.
Yeah. That was really, really interesting. Thanks, Caroline. I can see, I recognize the value that this, I've done it again. I called you Caroline. What is it?
Don't worry. I've been called worse.
There's something, I don't know, it's not in my disc profile. I'm obviously not a detailed. Oh dear. Yes, Catherine. I really understand how this can be really, really powerful. I don't know if you've come across, there is a Chrome add-in that you can put in as a Chrome extension called Crystal, and it gives you a disc-like assessment of the profiles you're looking at. And interestingly, it's showing me up as a DI, not an IS on my profile. So it's obviously assessing what it sees in my LinkedIn profile, which is because I guess I'm there promoting and selling my business more. There's more of the D coming out in that. But it's interesting because it's designed to be able, if you're about to engage with somebody, to give you an insight into their profile. But the danger is it could be misleading because that's not my actual style. I'm an SI rather than a DI. Just some words of warning there. If you've seen this Crystal Chrome extension, it can be misleading if it's about context.
Yeah.
What it's working on is what it sees on my LinkedIn profile, and that is the context of that is me promoting and selling a business. But if your LinkedIn profile, if you're running a business and your LinkedIn profile comes out as CS, maybe that's your profile is not generating much in the way of revenue for you. That could be a good indicator for you. So worth looking at.
It's also interesting how actually, if you're attracting clients to your profile and your profile is giving you a particular style, actually, how are you really showing up? Yeah. And is that reflective of who you really are when you're posting on social media? I mean, that's another thing to think about in terms of who your ideal client is and how you're showing up in order to be able to give them the best view of who you are.
Yeah. So that was really, really useful. If somebody wanted to talk to you about DISC or about coaching in general, how can they get in touch with you, Kat?
So LinkedIn LinkedIn Messenger. So my name is Catherine Nicholas. You can see I've got no E in the middle of my name. That's because my mum spelt it wrong on my birth certificate. So I'm a Catherine, not a Catherine. So if you want to find me, I'm Catherine Nicholas on LinkedIn, and I'll be very happy to connect with people. Just send me a message to say where you found me. You can also look up on Heart and Soul Coaching. I have my website's www.heartandsoulcoaching.co.uk, I think it is. Can't remember now. And then I'm also on Facebook and Instagram as well. So yeah, I do cover most of the main social, but LinkedIn is probably where I spend most of my time, I think. So please feel free to connect. If I offer one-to-one coaching, I do group coaching. I've been working with some small businesses and helping them grow their businesses just by giving them some extra time to think through some of the things that block them. And that's been really powerful. So how do they grow as a result of just having some time to themselves? So yeah, people who want some time to reflect and have some time for themselves to unblock some stuff has been really powerful. So yeah, find me on social media, on the web.
And obviously, if you're watching this on LinkedIn, on the Link Business page, Catherine's obviously one of the speakers, so you can click through straight to her profile from there. I'm sure she'll go on and put a comment in with links to her other social media and her email or website, whatever. And if you're watching the recording, again, all of that stuff will be there. But this might pop up elsewhere. For example, Catherine might put it on her website, so there might be little snippets of it appearing in sort of places. I'm sure we could probably create a few TikToks out of this somewhere online.
I knew how to use it, yeah. To get my daughter to help me.
Not to remember somebody's name would be a out of this.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
And on that note, now I think we should call this a day. Right, so thanks everyone for listening in. Thank you, Catherine, for coming along and sharing your insights with us. And thank you once again for the session you did for the Hub and the Hub members. That was really brilliant. It went down a storm. It was really, really good. And watch out for more LinkedIn Lives on Link Business. Next Tuesday, I've got my the next LinkedIn Live in my A to Z of LinkedIn series, which is every Tuesday morning at 10:30. And next Tuesday it's the S word, search. Ooh. So if you want to learn a bit more about how to search on LinkedIn, come along next Tuesday, 10:30 onto Link Business, and I'll be talking all things search. But for now, thanks once again, Catherine. It's been brilliant. Lovely to see you again, and we'll see you again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye for now.